Welcome to the Personal Podcast, the podcast where we get to know the real person behind the professional. In this episode, I'm joined by Nick Pope. Nick is Managing Director at Premier Tech Water and Environment. And I'm Charlotte Nichols, your host. Nick, your son Charlie died at just 19 after falling into a canal on a night out. How do you move forward with your life after such a traumatic experience?
Good question, I suppose. It's going to sound a bit trite, but really just one step at a time. You just keep moving forward, and you go through phases. As you know, it happened 6 years ago, well, over 6.5 years ago with Charlie. So you go through different phases of how you carry on. But yeah, it's just keep moving forward, really.
Horrific. Can you tell us more about it, how it happened?
Yeah, sure. He was at University of Manchester. He went there in September 2017, and he was on a night out. We knew he was going on a night out. He sort of said he was, obviously as they do. And it was a period of time. It was March 2018 when I don't know whether you remember, but there was a really violent sort of weather system came in called the Beast from the East.
Oh, I do remember.
Yeah,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people do because it was so severe.
It was.
So that was the night he was going out. He preloaded with friends as they do, as students do, and that was that really. We obviously we were at home. He was out and getting on with his life. And then the following afternoon, the next day, late in the afternoon, one of his good friends from Manchester contacted us and said, "We're on a night out with Charlie and he's not come home. Has he come home to you?" And obviously he hadn't. So a couple of hours go by, and in those situations, you're never really sure what to do. And then at about 6 o'clock that night, we thought, well, no, we've not. We rang around. We sort of tried to find everything we could to find out, to contact him. Obviously, his phone wasn't ringing. So we contacted the police, the local police, and said that he's a missing person. And they were brilliant, actually. I mean, they got onto it very, very fast. And they contacted Manchester police. And then the following day, the following afternoon, actually, we got told that you can do something which I wasn't aware with a mobile phone. You can ping it to find out where it is. So
Right.
They were doing that with Charlie's phone. And they located it to a very specific spot. And that was in the canal in Manchester. So they then told us that they'd found a body, pretty sure it was Charlie, but we would have to go down and identify it the following day. That was the Friday, I think. And that's what we did, and that's when we found out really what happened. So they'd gone out on a night out with a bunch of guys. They got split up. And what we found out later, actually, at the inquest was he had tried to get on a bus with a friend, but the bus driver wouldn't let them on because they were drunk. So, which, that these things happen. But they then got split up. The weather that night was just horrendous. And what they think happened was he got disorientated, probably hypothermia, and slipped and fell into the canal, which was iced over at the time. It was that cold. Mm-hmm. So he went through the ice. So that's kind of what happened.
Just horrendous. I mean, are there even the words to describe how you felt in that moment when you discovered what had happened?
No, I mean, your world just collapses, It's you clearly never imagine anything like that could happen to you. You see it on the news to other people, but when it's yourself, it's you just in a state of shock, really. You just go numb, And then we've got two other kids, an older, Charlie was the middle one, older son and a younger daughter, but you've then just got to kind of manage the practicalities of the whole thing,
Yeah. And, what are the practicalities that you have to go through straight after that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, literally, going to the morgue to identify him, and that's just, you can't begin to imagine what that is, but that's something you have to do. And then beyond that, then there's just a whirlwind of, friends, family, organising the funeral, and the police, obviously, because of the nature of what happened, have to investigate. About 6 months later, the post-mortem and the inquest. And so, yeah, it's a whole world that you never know or understand that you've got to get through, you know.
There's so much stuff you have to do at the time. You're probably feeling the worst you've ever felt in your life.
Yeah.
Is there a particular like harrowing moment or memory that kind of revolves around your brain even today?
I think that initial, I think it was a text actually from one of his best mates to say, "We don't know where he is. Do you know where he is?" At that moment, you start to pray for the best. And, you know, but you're nagging at the back of your mind. The longer it goes on, you know, this could work out quite badly. That's pretty horrendous, I think.
Definitely. It's given me like the goose pimples, just, you know, you recalling that text because, you know, you're always, well, for me, I always think the worst of things like that happen.
Of course, yeah.
Goodness me. And, you know, what kept you going? You've mentioned kind of just taking it one day at a time, one foot in front of the other, but there must have been some really dark days. And what got you through that?
First and foremost, you know, my family. I mean, obviously, you know, there was myself, my wife, and my other two children. So we've become a very, very tight, close-knit unit because we kind of can relate to it and empathise with it, you know.
Yeah.
So that's obviously one thing that keeps you going. And as I say, you go kind of a bit of a roller coaster. You know, you do have very dark days as well. But I think, you know, I'm very lucky with this is that my wife and I, we kind of support each other very well through it. And often what we found, you know, the down days get less, obviously, over time. But at the time, it's quite significant. But generally, we wouldn't be both down at the same time, thankfully.
Yes.
So one could pick the other one up a little bit. And also sometimes you just realise you just got to let people get through it and do their own thing, you know. We would refer to it as falling in a puddle. And if you can't, you know, sometimes you'd be in the puddle for a day or two or a week and, you know, you just try and get through it.
And was there any particular support that helped you get out of the puddle, like professional help or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we looked for different. It was different for both of us, actually. There's a fantastic organisation called the Compassionate Friends, TCF, and they specialise in supporting parents and siblings who've lost either a sibling or a child. They have some great literature. They have access to a lot of people who are members of them that you can talk to. So there was quite a bit of that. Andrea, my wife, used to actually go. There was a monthly meeting in Newcastle that she used to go to, where there's a big group of bereaved parents. That helped her quite a bit. It didn't work for me. I didn't feel comfortable in a big group talking about it. And yeah, we did. Well, I did counselling as well. You kind of talk to people. That was quite useful in the sense that they gave you techniques and tools to help. When you felt yourself getting pretty down and sliding, that to try and sort of stabilise yourself.
Yeah.
And then there was, we always say you kind of, when it happens, you become an exclusive member of a club that you never wanted to join. And it's interesting because of that. That club is very tight.
Right.
You can talk to anybody about anything in that club, and they'll help you. And everybody's at different stages of the journey.
And did that provide a real turning point for you, or was there any books or phrases that anyone said that could really kind of help bring you out of the dark days? Not
so much phrases, I think. There was lots of access to information, be it books or people or podcasts. There was a weekend retreat we did as well, which was quite interesting, an annual event where people came from all over the country, and that had lots of access to conversations. And it's something that's really important, I feel, when you've lost a child, is a lot of people can't cope you talking about it. So you don't have often access to open up and to talk about it.
Absolutely.
And I like talking about it. Charlie was here. We like to remember him.
Yes.
So when you're in that kind of environment where somebody's lost a child, obviously everybody's very relaxed, very comfortable. You're not worried that you're going to offend somebody or say the wrong thing, you know.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, quite a good place to relax into, really.
Definitely. And how did you manage the grief of your other family members, like your other children? That must be really tough.
That is interesting, I found, because when you talk about it, we've lost a child, so our grief is about losing a child. But Joe and Daisy, their grief is about losing a sibling, and I've never lost a sibling, so I don't know what that grief feels like. And we learned that, you know, as we went along, because you assume everybody's grief's the same. You've all lost the same person, but your relationship to that person is very, very different.
True.
And so it actually was very tricky helping the kids, because they were going through different emotions, you know, obviously anger, bitterness and so on. So you just try and help them process that and deal with that, and trying to give them access to people who've lost a sibling, because they can help them better than I can, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it comes into the power of sharing your story, you know, sharing your story with people who've had similar experiences, and you might never know they've had similar experiences if you don't share your story.
Yes, exactly.
And just hearing a story that you can relate to, it kind of helps so much, I find, you know, obviously on much less painful things I've been through. You just share your story, you can hear and relate to other people's. So it's fantastic that there was the group set up to have access to that.
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot, you know, if anybody's sort of listening and wondering if it's happened to them, there is a lot. I mean, I would start with TCF, the Compassionate Friends. They're great in their own right, but they can also signpost you to lots of other areas and things if you want to try different approaches, you know. Yeah.
Do you still have a lot of dark days today?
Yes. Yeah, there's no point in denying that. I think now it's less frequent, but it's more what we call trigger driven. So, you know, a birthday, Christmas coming up is never easy. Clearly, the anniversary of his death, 1st of March. And then, you know, you'll hear a song, or it's things that set you off, really, I suppose.
How do you deal with those days?
As time goes on, it gets easier to manage. I fall back a little bit on the techniques I got through counselling. So if you find yourself doing what, you know, they would call catastrophizing, which is very easy to do. But now I've kind of been taught to how to recognise when that's happening, how to deal with it, how to put the brakes on it a bit. And yeah, sometimes, as I say, you just best to be left alone, or go for a dog walk, or you know, do things like that. But we try to, with Charlie, you know, he was a great guy, and he was very lively, very fun. We try and come out of it by trying to be more positive about it. You know, what would Charlie have wanted? How would he have wanted us to behave, to react, and so on? You know? Yeah,
that's a nice way of kind of reframing things. Still incredibly difficult to do, I imagine. How about work during all this? Was it a help? Is it a form of escape still today, or was it a hindrance? Did you have an understanding boss?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't working for Premier Tech at the time, actually, but I was great support around me at work. I was very, very lucky in that regard. I think I took about 3 weeks off. I went back after the funeral, as I recall. And yeah, I managed to kind of compartmentalise things, so it wasn't too bad. Certainly in the first 6 months, and again, I was kind of warned by professionals this could happen, is your brain drifts. You know, it's very difficult to concentrate and maintain concentration for a long period of time.
Right.
That's, you know, sorted itself out now, but certainly that first 6 months, that was difficult. But yeah, it was just almost something that had to be done. You know, it was difficult going back, and sort of, you know, because obviously we'd had a period where Andrew and I were, you know, together all the time, you know, and that was sort of tricky at the start to build our confidence back up again.
Yeah, no, I can. Well, I can't imagine. It just sounds horrendous. But like you say, these things you need to do, unfortunately. It'd be lovely to just think, oh, well, I can't possibly work again. But obviously you need to, generally, unless you're quite lucky in that respect. But and how about today? You know, do you find sometimes you can throw yourself into work as a distraction?
Yeah, I don't need to do that so much today. As it's gone on, it's more, you know, work is work and home is home. I try and make sure, as I say, the key sort of trigger dates, I'm at home, not at work.
Yeah.
But that side of things has kind of normalised a little bit.
Okay. And let's talk about Charlie and his legacy. Like, what are your favourite memories of Charlie?
He was a great guy. I mean, and even in the family, he was always the kind of the odd one out. If everybody said go left, Charlie'd go right. And he had very strongly held beliefs and views, and he didn't care if people didn't follow him, and if it wasn't the popularist thing to do. That was Charlie. He was off on it, and he would go and then he'd have a huge debate with people about why he was right and they were wrong, trying to convince them. But he was also fiercely loyal. He was very protective of his friends. He loved them very much. They loved him. And he was, he's a very charismatic character, People liked to be around Charlie. He was good fun.
Oh, lovely. Such lovely traits to have. When you obviously discovered how he died, you started campaigning straight away about barriers on the canal. And I know it was obviously because of Charlie that made you want to do this, but surely you were dealing with a lot at the time. Why did you feel the need to do it instantly?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that vividly. Reason why it was instant was after I'd identified Charlie's body, I asked one of the policemen to take me to where it had happened, because I don't know Manchester. I didn't know Manchester at all. And I had no idea, actually, that it had canals. I mean, I just never really visited the city. So I remember, obviously, it was still that kind of period, the beast and the east. It was very cold, very grey and horrible. And it was about 3:00 in the afternoon. He took me to the site where it had happened. And we parked up on the main street, and I didn't, you can't see a canal. And then we went down a little side sort of street, little alley. And then as you came out this alley, you just opened up and you almost fell into this canal. I mean, it was just, I couldn't believe it, there's no barriers. It was icy, it was slippy, and it was right in the middle of the city. And I said to the police guy, because he was from Manchester, I said, wow, it's a bit dangerous, isn't it? And he's like, well, I never really thought about it. He said, because I'm from Manchester, we're used to it, I said, yeah, but you've got like 50,000 students coming in every year from out of the city who don't know it,
Yeah.
and are not aware of it. And that was my instant reaction to what I experienced was, this is so dangerous. I can't believe this. And it started from there, really.
I saw the photos from the news articles back from when you were campaigning straight away. It did look so dangerous.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. So are there now barriers in place?
There is at that spot. What happened was there was a body I didn't know existed to look at water safety. It was called the Manchester Water Safety Partnership,
Okay.
The MWSP. And I found out about it quite quickly. I don't know how. So I asked to meet them. And within a week or so, because it was creating quite a lot of publicity in Manchester, because obviously it was quite an unusual, shocking death.
Yeah.
And so I met them, and the leader of them, a fireman called Dave Wilson, fantastic guy, and kind of explained what they were doing and what they were trying to achieve. And they said, because the press knew that I was meeting with them at that meeting, and they wanted to talk to me about the outcome of the meeting. So they asked if they could quote me to say, we've had a very constructive meeting and I support and da-da-da. And I said, no, you can't. I said, it's the first meeting I've met you. I don't know what efforts are being made, and I can't put my name to that just yet. So then that's when the dialogue started. And it was a bit tricky at first because they were very defensive and protective of their city, which I fully understand, here in sort of the northeast, in Durham and in Newcastle and in York, we've had problems with water deaths and students going into water bodies. So I wasn't there to criticise Manchester, far from it. Charlie loved Manchester. But I just said, look, we can do more, there's lots we can do. And then slowly, it took a while when I think they realised, look, I wasn't out to be vindictive against them or to point fingers at them. I was more interested in what can we do differently. And it started from there. And the trigger, sort of the real turning point was they got the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents in, and they paid them to do an independent survey of all of the inner city canals in Manchester. And they came with 11 recommendations, and they've implemented all 11. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, excellent.
And I'm still a part of that group. They meet quarterly. I try and get there if I can, but more often than not, I can't. But in fact, last week they just sent me the minutes of the latest meeting with what they're doing, and it's fantastic work they're doing. Really is.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. Do you still campaign today?
Yeah, certainly. I always am available if anybody wants to kind of use me for an event. So I still work quite closely. There's two main events a year to do with water safety, both national and on the Newcastle quayside near where I live. They always have an event there, so I always go and help them with that. As I say, I try and help with Manchester where I can. And yeah, I'll just, help wherever I can, really,
Excellent. And do you believe that Charlie's death and the campaigning you've done since that has prevented others?
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's funny, I sent an email to the Water Safety Partnership this week, and I said, look, with the amount of measures you're working on and actions you're working on, it'll be impossible to quantify, but you are saving lives for sure.
Yeah.
100%, definitely.
You can never fully tell, can you, when you stop things from happening?
Yeah.
So yeah, well,
that's right.
That must feel rewarding. I know obviously you would much rather not be doing that.
Well, I always take the view with that is if one family doesn't have to go through what we did because of any of that,
Yes.
then that's fantastic. That's a great success.
Yeah.
So that was why I was almost on automatic pilot with it really at the time, people were saying, how do you do it and how do you do the interviews and things? It was just, it was just something I was so passionate that we had to change,
Yeah, it just always came from within. It had to happen.
Yeah.
You were doing it.
Yeah.
What else have you done or do you still do to keep Charlie's legacy alive?
The main one actually is the anniversary of his death, the 1st of March, is a very difficult day for us. That's probably the worst 24 hours in the year. And when we came up to the anniversary of the first one, as I say, we didn't want to be sad and miserable, and because that's not what he would have wanted, but we were trying to figure out how do we get through the day. And one of Andrea's friends actually said, well, why don't we make it a good deed day so that all of the friends, and the network we've got in the family, why don't we ask them to do a good deed in Charlie's honour? And so that's how it started. And it's just grown arms and legs, really. And it's something now, we call it a random act of kindness, on Charlie's Good Deeds Day, and pay it forward and so on. And people get so much pleasure out of it. And we get so much pleasure out of the fact that people are doing something in his honour, and it cheers them up. They don't feel they need to be careful around us a bit. We talk about Charlie's Good Deed Day, not the day he died. And so that's the main thing really that we do, and really enjoy it. Actually, it's nice,
It's such a beautiful thing to do. I saw a clip of you speaking, I think it was on Sky News, about it.
Yeah.
What's the kindest thing anyone's done or that you've done as part of that day?
The things, there's so many, but the ones I love the most are the ones that don't cost any money. And don't get me wrong, it's nice when people buy people flowers or they buy them a coffee or whatever, that's lovely. But people do the most lovely things. So, we keep saying, look, it doesn't have to cost money, you can do anything that's just random. A friend of ours, he's got a hedge cutting and a tree surgeon business, and he cut someone's hedge for free. And they didn't know it was going to be for free, And there's just some lovely stuff, One guy, I remember, he called me a few days after it, and I can't remember exactly what he'd done now, but he was telling me what he'd done, and he said, you know what? He said, it felt so good. He said, I felt really good. He said, they liked it. He said, but I felt even better. And I thought, oh, wow. If it's making people smile in his memory and his honour, then that's great,
Oh, that's so lovely. And obviously you've experienced proper raw grief. Did you struggle with anyone misunderstanding your grief at the time you were going through the peak of it?
Not so much that, but I tell you what was surprising, and we were told this would happen, and we didn't believe it. So we'd made contact with some groups that are dealing with parents who'd lost their kids, and they said one thing that'll happen, and don't be surprised, is in terms of supporting you through it, there'll be people who step up and are incredible, and you can talk anything to them and you can offload, and there'll be good friends who disappear. And they said that they're not going to do that maliciously, but they can't cope themselves with it. And it happened. And when it happens, that's tough, because I know, obviously it's difficult for everybody, but that's quite difficult. Yeah.
Goodness, so yeah, I can imagine that must be so difficult. Have they come back into your life now?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I mean, they just can't cope with talking about it, and we love talking about Charlie.
Yes.
And it's interesting, everybody's different with their grief with this sort of thing, because some of the groups Andrew went to, there would be, the wife would be there, the husband wouldn't be, but she would say to the group that since it's happened, the husband can't mention the child's name, he doesn't want the child's photographs in the house, he just can't cope with it at all. And I can't imagine that. If I couldn't, and we couldn't as a family openly talk about Charlie and celebrate him and all the rest, then that would be very hard. But everybody's grief is so different.
Absolutely. And I guess there's no right or wrong way, is there? And yeah, I mean, what advice would you give to anyone who's currently going through such a loss?
I think reach out to initially things like TCF. Go to your doctor and your GP if, there's no kind of shame in that. I'd never had to have anything like that before in my life, but I'm glad I did. It was really important to... Personally, I didn't want to go onto medication, so I wanted other ways I could do it, and counselling was helpful. But there's lots and lots of support out there. I would reach out, as early as you can, as you feel capable of doing.
Did it make you kind of question the whole point of life?
Yeah, just a bit.
Does it still today?
Not so much. I mean, one thing it does do, and it's true with Andrea as well, is I'm not afraid to die. It doesn't concern me in the slightest when I die. But you've got to be a bit careful with that, I found early on, because people would interpret that in a different way.
Yes.
And I never ever intended that, I never ever got close to giving up completely. But people interpret that, and then they're worried for you,
Yes.
But it's not. It's almost kind of at peace, really, that, life, you're here for the blink of an eye in the scheme of things. Even if you live to the ripe old age of 80, say, 80 years in the scheme of things is not a lot.
4,000 weeks, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And you think how long, Hadrian Wall's been around, 2,000 years. It's nothing. And that was the one good thing with Charlie, actually. He always lived for the day. It was almost like he knew something was going to happen.
I was about to ask that. Do you think he knew? Yeah.
Because he lived his life at 100 mile an hour. He was just never sat still. And, that's what we do. And Joe and Daisy do now. They're living their best life,
Yeah.
And they're living it now, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah. And why are you not afraid to die now? Or do you feel like you would reconnect with Charlie? Yeah. I
mean... none of us know, do we? I'm not a particularly spiritual or religious person, but I would hate to think that I'll never speak to him again, or, because I don't know, I've not experienced it, but Charlie's was exceptionally sudden, exceptionally young, so you always think you've got a long time to have a relationship.
Yeah.
When it's gone so fast, so suddenly, so violently, you think, surely that can't be the last time I interact with him,
I like to think that there's something else.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to connect with him on, say, the other side, if you believe in that?
No, not kind of formally, no. We do have a thing with him where, as a family, this is going to sound a bit weird, I know, but when we're on holidays and things, crows, tend to be around us a lot.
Yeah.
And we kind of, joke that that's Charlie and whatever, but there are certain times when things happen. For instance, we were on holiday in Japan, and I was filming this crow at a train station because we were saying goodbye to Daisy. She was studying there, and filmed it, 20-second clip, 15 seconds, whatever. And when I sent it to the WhatsApp group, right at the end, there was this like sort of dancing sort of little star, if you like, bouncing around. Yeah. And we all were like, wow, I can't explain it. I don't know what it's about, but it just makes you think maybe,
Oh, I totally believe things like that. I read a book over summer called Signs, written by some psychic lady, and you don't even have to say it out loud, but in your head you ask the other side or someone who's passed on for a sign.
Right.
And so I did this with some relatives, elderly, and and even my dog, Harvey, who the company's named after, and so I asked Harvey, because I thought, oh, what can he send me? I was like, send me like a bone, Harvey, like a proper bone, like a dog sort of bone, like a raw bone.
Yeah.
And the next day, my youngest daughter was playing in this Wendy house at this community centre we were doing an art class with in school holidays. And she just literally opened the little shutters on it, threw this chicken bone at me. It landed on my lap. Wow. And I was just like, wow. I mean, that's...
Somebody sent you something.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how true it is. But, you know, again, it brought me a bit of comfort.
Yeah.
And so I do believe there's something in the crows. So maybe, I mean, I can send you that book if it's helpful.
Yes, please. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. I'll make a note to do that. It just, again... And they cover it from a sceptical point of view as well sometimes. But there's so much we don't know about life.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly.
And death.
And there's, there has been a lot of coincidences around him in that regard, you know.
Okay.
And again, it might be just, you're trying to read something in it to comfort yourself. But there has been a couple of things that are very strange.
Yeah, any you can share? Or?
Probably the weirdest one was, it was between his death but before his funeral, and I was walking the dog, and I walk these same walks all the time. I've walked them for years, and I was walking along this kind of tree line sort of cut, and there was this little dog just sort of wandering around, and it was very unusual. I'd walk loads of times. There's never a dog just on its own. So I'm looking around for the owner, couldn't find anybody, so it looked a bit distressed. So I scooped it up. Took it home, we took it to the vets, and they said, oh yeah, it's chipped, we'll get his owner and so on. So the owner came, and Andrew was there, I wasn't there when she came in. She said, oh, thank you so much for finding the dog, come on, Charlie, let's go home. And that was weird, because, I'd never in 20 years seen a dog on its own in that stretch.
Crazy. I knew you were going to say that was his name. And I got goosebumps straight away. Yeah.
I mean, that's mad,
Yeah. I feel there's something in that.
Yeah. So... I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. And what have you learned about yourself going through such tragic circumstances? Resilience.
I think you don't know what you're capable of until, probably the worst thing that can happen to you is thrown at you. And again, we talked about it, everybody reacts differently, everybody has different ways of grieving, there's no right or wrong. And I can see it in the kids as well. They're very, very resilient, I think as well what it does clearly is it gives you a sense of priorities.
Yes.
What's important, what's not, and just not sweating the small stuff anymore, it doesn't matter,
Absolutely. Do you ever feel kind of bitter that this had to happen to you?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And again, if I'm being totally honest, we're getting to the stage now where friends are having grandkids and kids are getting married and, who we know and stuff, and it's tough, and you feel guilty because obviously you're happy for them. You're very, very happy for them, but you can't help but feel, you're something you've missed out on.
Absolutely. I think it's normal, I take it do you ever voice that to them,
No, try not to. No, because you are genuinely pleased for them.
Oh, absolutely.
But you got to kind of deal with it in your own way as well,
Yeah. And what have you learned about life?
It's probably most of the things that I've kind of have said, really. People surprise you, good and bad. You realise actually, nothing's that important, really. So, what's far more important is just to be happy and enjoy yourself. One of the things we have a motto with the kids now is if they're ever going to do something that's moderately dangerous, surfing or whatever, then we just say, remember, rule number one, and the kids know rule number one is don't die. And there are no other rules.
Yeah.
There's no other ruals in our family, that's it.
Oh, it's a good rule. Yeah.
So, and they know that, and they crack on with it.
And it makes you realise so much in life's out of your control, isn't it? And there is that cliche that it's all about how you react to things, but we cling on to control. We think we can. We think we can control our little worlds, and it's
no, and it's well, and that's a good point. Is just control what you can control, and don't worry about the rest. Because people, I read something recently which is very true. Is that what people end up doing in their lives? 95% of what goes on is uncontrollable. 5% is controllable.
Yeah.
And people spend all of their time trying to control the 95%. And it's crazy, you know. It's like, just let it go, you know.
One of my new mantras is control the input, surrender it to the output.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you think about it that way, well, what can I control? Let's do that. And then once I've done that, I know I've done my best, and I've just got to see what happens.
Yeah. And the rest really doesn't matter, you know. It's, but as humans, we don't tend to do that, you know.
No. We always have to go through life-changing events to learn the hard way, almost.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And you touched on happiness there. Are you generally happy these days?
There's something that, again, we were told early on, which has proved to be very true, is as opposed to happy, they say what goes is joy. Okay. And they say that goes for a long time and takes a long time to come back. And I would say that's still true today. You know, we both, Andrew and I, reflect on it. If you go to a party or a reunion, we went to a works reunion the other weekend, or a concert, the joy's missing. So you're there, you're attending, but it often feels like you're sort of outside a window looking in and watching everybody else have fun, and you're not experienced that same level of fun. Yeah. We're happy enough, don't get me wrong, we're not kind of miserable every day. But I'd say the joy disappears, and that hasn't come back yet.
And from people you speak to, does it ever return?
Yeah, they do say it returns, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they say it comes back, so we're kind of holding on to that.
Yeah.
But, it's I'd say that's what really hits you.
How long did it take you to laugh again? Things like that we take for granted.
In the family unit, pretty quickly, we would make jokes, sort of what people might say sick jokes, but it was the four of us, we can say what we want.
Absolutely.
So that was quite quick. In the wider circle, it took a little while, I think, you just feel you're so detached from everything,
Yeah.
But as I say, we've got some fantastic friends as well, who've been absolutely brilliant and helped us through, and you can totally trust in their circle and in their environment.
Yeah. And has it changed kind of how you would define happiness?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I think prior to it, like most people, happiness was defined by objects and wealth and possessions and things. That doesn't really matter at all. That's irrelevant, really. Happiness is your family being healthy and well, and happy in a sense of what they're trying to do. Daisy graduated this summer and started her first job and is loving it. Joe's in New Zealand; he's living and working there now, and he's having a great time. And they're happy. And I read something the other day which is so true, which is, as a parent, you're as happy as your least happy child.
That is true.
It's absolutely true, You just want them to be happy.
And is Daisy still in Japan as well?
No, she finished now. So she came back. She did a year of university in Japan. She came back and finished at Leeds Uni in July. And then, she just started her first job. So.
It's quite local to you.
Yeah, it is, yeah. She's sort of 15 minutes away, which is great,
Lovely, because I'd imagine you must miss, did you say it was Joe who's in New Zealand? Yeah, that must still be hard.
It is. But again, part of that was done consciously, was after about a year after Charlie's death, he was doing fine, but he was drifting a bit. Yeah. And we've got very good friends of ours who live in New Zealand. So we said, look, you can get a work visa down there for a year quite easily. Can he come and see you for a year just to do something different? Yeah. And that was 2019, November. And then COVID hit and he got stuck there. And it was the best thing that could have ever happened, because he got on with his career. He's always loved climbing, and he's doing a job now which is high rope access. So he's dangling off skyscrapers and cleaning them.
Not brilliant
and
for me, but brilliant that he enjoys that.
Yeah, and the pictures are a bit sort of scary, he sends back, but he absolutely loves it. And he's gone from strength to strength, Yeah. So we miss him, but of course nowadays the sort of telecoms and communications are so fantastic.
Absolutely.
You can sort of chat to him for nothing on WhatsApp, every week. And we've been down there. he came back this summer for the first time actually in 5 years.
Oh, lovely.
And we're going to go out again next year, back in the next year.
So at least you get great holidays.
Yeah, exactly. Fantastic holidays when it's miserable here. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. And are you optimistic about the future?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. You know, we keep Charlie in our lives. We keep him alive. And yeah, you know, there's other chapters are going to open up for me in the next sort of, 5-10 years, hopefully. We've got lots of things to look forward to.
Yeah.
But most importantly, live for today.
Yeah, that's a really important message. And what other passions do you have outside of work?
I used to play a bit of golf. I've sort of dropped that, but I'm going to try and get back into that. I like watching football and walking the dog. I love walking the dog.
Yeah.
Again, one of the things that they try and teach you to help you through it is what they call mindfulness and staying in the moment. And I'd kind of read about that before it happened, but never thought too much of it. But it is so powerful.
Oh, it's critical in those states. I mean, we all go through things in our life. And I read a book by Eckhart Tolle about Power of Now. I don't know if you read that one.
Right, no.
But literally in those moments that are just so painful, you literally just have to take yourself out of it. Just focus on your breathing, focus on now. And
exactly.
A lot of the harm as humans that we cause to ourselves is from the brain. Actually recreating it, reliving it, or worrying based on what's happened in the past about what's going to happen in the future.
Exactly, yeah. And that was one of the things that they helped me with. Was I'd never heard the word catastrophizing before. When they explained it, it just made so much sense that, you can go from, tripping over a curbstone to suddenly being homeless in like the space of 20 seconds. You're like, how did this happen?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's just trying to, as you say, live in the moment, live now, you know. And a great analogy they gave us for mindfulness was I love walking the dog. I walk for miles. And they said, well, if you've got any doubt about it, look at a dog. A dog is always in the moment.
Totally.
It's only ever in that second, that flower it's smelling, that bird it's chasing, whatever it is, it's in the moment. And life's a whole lot easier that way.
Absolutely. One of our values, because the company is named after dogs, is be more dog.
Yes,
particularly in that
exactly.
spontaneity factor.
Yeah.
And I think that's often the difference between dogs and cats, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cats overthinking in the corner somewhere, plotting.
Probably, yeah. That's probably true.
Just a question I want to kind of end on is, what do you now believe is the meaning of life? And do you have any philosophies that you now live your life by?
As I say, I think the main one is to enjoy your life, appreciate what you've got. Don't strive for things because that's not really important. Friends, and being a good friend, I think, is important.
Yes.
And again, that kind of comes home. A lot of it, we kind of learned from Charlie in the aftermath was we set up a book at the funeral for his friends to sign. And some of the comments in there were just incredible about Charlie and what he'd done for them and how he'd helped them and how he'd got them through. And there's even some like, I felt suicidal till you helped me. And it was just like, wow, is that our Charlie?
Yeah.
And you think just live a bit more like that, just help people, back them up, support them. And
Oh, he sounds incredible.
yeah. Oh, no, he's a great kid, and as I say, different. He was quite different, in the sense of he had his own beliefs and that was it, and he didn't really care if you didn't like him or not,
Do you think sometimes people are too special for this earth?
Yeah, I do. And it's a good point that, because we felt that with Charlie actually. He was always in scrapes. I mean, him and Andrea had a horrendous car crash when he was about 13 or 14. They were driving to an Outward Bound event and Andrea lost control of the car, it skidded off, went into oncoming traffic, missed it all, ended up in a field on its roof. And that day they really should have been killed. It was such a terrible accident. And I think that wasn't his time. I do believe we all have a time. We all have a date.
Yeah.
And for some reason, Charlie wasn't ready to go that time, He had things to do.
He had people to help.
And, and then he'd done his bit and that was his time,
Yeah.
But I definitely do believe that, yeah.
Yeah, it's something I've always believed, and I don't know why, but I've just always believed it. But on that, everyone having a date, my friend, my cousin, who's my best friend, was involved in a horrific car accident, and she nearly died on the scene. And it took her a while to recover, and then we think it was related. Her pelvis suddenly snapped in two, and she was in a wheelchair, and just nothing was helping medically. So she went to see a faith healer, and I don't know how they did it, but just hovered his hands, kind of like Reiki over that area, and she felt like just heat coming through, and she walked out. But yeah, I mean, crazy. And ever since that, I've been a lot more spiritual into that side of things. But one thing that always stuck with me was she talked quite openly to him, and he said everyone's got a date, and he can see it. That was one of his gifts. He can see people's dates. Wow. And he just said, because she was just terrified about a lot of things, again, catastrophizing after going through so much. And he's just like, it's not your time, you're going to be okay. But it just scares me. Imagine having that gift.
Yeah, it's almost scary. You almost wouldn't want it, wouldn't you?
No, I know.
It's scary, yeah.
But yes, so that's an interesting story to end on. But thanks so much for being so open about it.
No, thank you for having me.
We touched on the fact that sometimes people don't like these uncomfortable conversations, and you actually do enjoy talk. I'm sure you'd much rather not, but the cards are being dealt, and you'd rather talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. And Charlie was here. He lived with us. He was alive. He left an impression. People know him, and I don't not want to talk about him. But I understand. Well, I've come to understand that some people don't feel comfortable with that conversation, and that's okay. But,
that's okay, I guess. But I also heard you only truly die when the last person ever mentions your name, and then you're never mentioned.
That's it. Then you're gone.
So it is a real tragedy if you don't, tell his story and let that live on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no, I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. But you're not getting it away just yet. We've got the regular feature. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, if you could rate yourself at the following 10 things.
Okay.
How good looking are you?
Average, I guess. 5 I'll go with.
Okay. How funny do you think you are?
I like laughter and making jokes, so maybe 7.
Okay. Are you good at cooking?
Yes, I like cooking. I'd put 8 for cooking.
Oh, wonderful. What's your signature dish?
I like Asian food. I like cooking Asian food very much, but I'll try anything, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Are you good at singing?
1. No, that is a well-known standing joke in our family, and unfortunately I've passed it on to my daughter.
Oh, but do you still sing?
Oh, yeah, I love singing, yeah.
I'm glad it hasn't put you off.
Yeah.
Do you drink much alcohol?
I like to drink.
Yeah. How did your relationship change with alcohol, going through what you've been through?
Not massively. Probably at the start, yes. But, in terms of how frequently I drink, it's probably about the same as it was.
Okay, yeah. Did you score yourself for that? I can't remember.
No. I would score myself a 3 in the sense that I like it, but I'm not very good at it.
Okay, yeah, a bit of a lightweight. Raising children?
I would say hopefully a 7 or an 8 with that one. Got 2 lovely kids who are, absolute pride and joy, and hopefully we had something to do with that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. How good a friend are you?
I'd say an 8 or a 9 on that. Yeah, lovely. That's very important to me.
Yeah. How intelligent are you?
Probably about 7, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how kind are you?
An 8, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, and final one, which you've been waiting for. How good at sex are you, Nick?
Right. With that one, I would have to say I'm probably not the best one to judge that, really.
Okay. So Andrea I need to speak to?
Yeah, probably.
To verify? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Right, just pass
definitely.
over her number at the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.